You guys ever lose something? I lose stuff all the time. I lose my keys. I literally got out in my car the other day, and I got into my car and went, dang it. And then my wife walked out with the keys and handed them to me. She was yelling at me because I lose my watch, I lose my wallet, and she said, can you quit losing things? And I said, this is how God made me. Like, you can't just expect me to change. You've known me for 15 years. I lose all sorts of things. I lose my kids. I have a 5-year-old named Jonathan, and he just takes off running. He'll go. So we were out to eat a few weeks ago, maybe it was a couple months ago, and Pastor Tim came back from the bathroom, and he said, hey, I think I just saw Jonathan crawling out from underneath one of the stalls. And I looked over, and I'm like, oh, he's gone. I was walking through our Arlington location with my son Jonathan and one of my daughters, and I turned around, he was gone again. And I kept my cool for like a good 30 seconds where I was like, hey, has anybody seen my son? He's missing. Does anybody see him? And nobody saw him, so then I just grabbed the cop and I said, my son's missing. You will help me find them. He checked himself into kids. He literally did. He went into the kids' classroom. He was in there playing the whole time. If you have your Bibles with you, we're going to turn to Luke 15. We're going to see somebody who lost something very valuable as well. We're going to look at a story about that. Here Jesus is hanging out with a bunch of hooligans, people who are outcasts from society, sinners, and the holy men of his day, the Pharisees, ask why he's hanging out with these people. And so he tells 3 different stories to try to explain the importance of these people. The story of the lost coin, the story of the lost sheep, and the story of the lost son. We're going to look at the story of the lost coin. In Luke 15, 8 through 10, it says, or suppose a woman has 10 silver coins and loses one. Doesn't she light a lamp and sweep the house and search night and day carefully until she finds it? And when she finds it, she calls her friend and her neighbors together and says, rejoice with me, I found my lost coin. In the same way, I tell you, there is rejoicing in the presence of the angels of God over one sinner who repents. Pray with me. Jesus, we welcome you into the room. Lord, I pray that this would challenge us and change us. Whatever we're supposed to take from this would pierce our hearts and transform our souls. In Jesus' name, amen. So Jesus, in this parable, he's trying to explain how important people far from God are to God. Like that his heart is for them. In fact, they're the most important people on planet Earth to God. That's why Jesus came, is to reach people far from God. And he's also talking about our role in it, because we're the woman in the parable. We as Christ followers are to search night and day and sweep the floor and do everything we can to find this lost coin. I've been thinking, if this is so central to our faith, why are so many people still far from God? Why are so many coins still lost? I've been thinking about that, and I came up with a few reasons. They're not all the reasons, but they're the reasons we're going to talk about today. And the first reason is you don't realize it's your coin. You don't realize it's your coin. You don't have a responsibility for it. You don't have ownership over it. The woman in the story, this is her coin. It's 1/10 of her life savings. She'll do anything to find it. She has ownership over it. She knows that it belongs to her. She has a responsibility to it. You know, I made human beings. You ever make humans? I did. A whole tribe of them. Right? Yeah. And I'm their leader. I know some of you are like, oof, they need a new leader. I am. I'm their leader. They look to me for protection and direction. I have an 11-year-old named Connor. I have a 8-year-old named Rebecca. I have a 5-year-old named Jonathan, and I have a 4-year-old named Rachel. And anyways, we were doing VBS this summer, And all the kids were at VBS here at our Oakleaf location. I was a volunteer leader on the outside games. Me and Keneal, our location pastor here at Oakleaf. Keneal was leading it. I was just volunteering, and he said, we're going to play freeze tag, the volunteer leaders versus the kids. And so I'm tagging some of the kids, and then I see my son Connor, and I think, I'm going to get him. I'm going to chase him down. I'm going to show him that his old man is faster, smarter, stronger than him and always will be. So I start just plowing through the crowd of kids. I laser point at him, and I'm at a full sprint. I'm just... And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, my 8-year-old, Rebecca, comes running and stands right in front of me and just freezes like a deer in the headlights. And I'm 200 pounds barreling right at her like a linebacker. And if I nail her, she's out cold for sure. But I feel a responsibility to her. I got to protect her. And so I grab her like this and pull her in, and I go to roll. Now, the last time I rolled like that, I was in jiu-jitsu. And the coach said, if you roll wrong, you're going to the hospital. And I rolled wrong, and I went to the hospital. Busted up this shoulder. And as I was rolling, I remembered, you still didn't learn how to do this right. And all of my weight went boom, and just busted up my rotator cuff, and I jump up in this piercing pain, and I grab Rebecca in my good arm, and I go sit down real quick, and she's crying, and I say, are you okay? And she says, yeah, I just got scared, Dad. And I go, you want to go play with your friends? And she said, yeah. And I said, cool, I'm going to go to the hospital now. So I did. I went across the street to the urgent care, and there was the same doctor that I had saw before. And he's like, hey, you were in here last year with the other shoulder. Is it a jiu-jitsu injury again? And I was like, nah, freeze tag with an 8-year-old. Those VBS streets are dangerous, bro. I have a responsibility to my kids. I have to take care of them. I have ownership in that. There are people that are far from God. There are coins that are lost that you have a responsibility to, that you have ownership over. You may be thinking, who are those people? Well, Jesus alludes to that a little bit a few chapters later when he tells the story of Lazarus, the beggar, and the rich man. It's this story where this rich man has all that he needs. He has plenty of wealth, and outside his front gate, there's a beggar named Lazarus who's just hoping to get some crumbs off the rich man's plate. It'd be like if you walked outside your house and at the end of your driveway, there was a homeless guy there every week or every day, and they were like, you got any leftovers? And eventually, as the story goes on, the rich man dies, and so does Lazarus, the beggar, and he goes to heaven. The rich man goes to Hades, and there's this dialogue with the rich man talking to this angel, asking for Lazarus to come quench his thirst, or at least send Lazarus back to tell my family to take care of the people that God has divinely placed in our lives, the people that we have responsibility for. And Jesus is saying a couple things in this story. One, those of us who have power and means have a responsibility to take care of the powerless and those in need. Wow. Now, when you read Bible verses or stories like this, I wonder if you insert yourself into the story at all, and how many of us actually identify with the rich man. Because most of us probably think the rich man's down the road in a house just a little bit bigger than ours. But statistically, if you make $32,000 a year or more as a household income, you're in the top 1% richest people on planet Earth. Basically, this entire room is the rich man in that story. And we have a responsibility to take care of those who are powerless and those who are in need. There's another thing that Jesus is saying here. He's basically saying that we have a responsibility to the people that are in our vicinity, the people that are in our sphere. See, that the beggar was just outside the rich man's gate. He wasn't just any old beggar. He was the rich man's beggar. He was his responsibility. He wasn't anybody else's responsibility. God had placed that man there. He saw the need and he didn't meet it. It was his responsibility. So who's in your sphere? Who's in your vicinity? Who are you responsible for? Let me just take a moment. Close your eyes just for a minute. Who do you think of Who comes to mind? Who is that you have a relationship with? Is it a coworker? Is it a classmate? Somebody from the gym? A friend, a family member, an acquaintance? Who is it that's far from God that you are responsible for? I want you to keep that person in mind as we talk. You can open your eyes. There's this sociological term called diffusion of responsibility. It's this idea that the larger the crowd is, the less responsible you feel for anything to step in. So if like a fight breaks out and there's a big crowd there, you feel like somebody else will take care of it. Somebody else will break it up. Yeah. If there is an accident and there's a large crowd, somebody else will run in and help that person. It's the diffusion of responsibility. I was in Minnesota about 10 years ago. I was driving my car and it broke down. I pulled over to the side of the road. I was on like a major highway, and a cop pulled over right away, asked me if I was okay, and I said, yeah, I got my cell phone, I got AAA, I'll just call them and they'll come tow me, I'll be fine. So he takes off. And I get on the phone with AAA, and we're talking. They're having a hard time finding my account because I just moved from Birmingham back to Minnesota. And we're going back and forth when I look down at my phone and I realize I have 3% power on it. And so my anxiety starts raising. And I'm like, hey, lady, I need you to send a truck out. Okay, we can figure out this account later. My phone's at 3%. Don't leave me stranded out here on the road. Send a truck out. Then it goes down to 2%. Hey, listen, I'm on Highway 100, 694. This is what my car looks like. Send a truck out, 1%. Lady, do not do this. Send a truck out. 0, dies. What do you think about when you see a car on the side of the road? You think, they got a cell phone. I'm sure there's somebody coming to help them. The cops will pull over. It's their responsibility to take care of them. They're probably a serial killer, and this is a trap. Yeah, you drive on by. Somebody else will take care of that. Diffusion of responsibility. You can die in your car in Minnesota. It's cold. Like, it gets real cold in Minnesota. Like, there's numbers below 0 that it can get to. It was negative 17 degrees outside when Pastor Tim called me up and asked me if I wanted to move to Florida. He just said, do you want to move? And I went, yes. Yes. How much do I owe you to get this opportunity? You can die. So I sat there for about a half an hour until this young couple pulled over, asked me if I was okay, and I said I need to charge up my phone. So I plugged in my phone, charged it up, called AAA. They had not sent a truck. So they found my account and got a truck out to me, and I was rescued. Here's the thing. For the people that God has divinely placed in your life, your coworkers, your friends, your family, the cell phone's dead. The cops have left. And there's no truck coming. And if you don't pull over, nobody will. It's your responsibility. They're your person far from God. They are your lost coin. Second reason why I think people remain far from God, why lost coins remain unfound, is because it costs you too much. It costs you too much. It cost me too much. It costs the woman in the story all sorts of things. It costs her finances. She has to pay for the oil to light the lamp. It costs her time. She's up day and night looking for the coin. It costs her time and her energy. She's sweeping and crawling across the floor until she finds it. She has to put in work. It'll cost you something. A couple of years ago, Keneal called me up. He said, there's a lady in the parking lot barefoot. And I said, okay, cool, I'll be up there in about a minute, because I was like a mile away. So I drive up to the Oak Leaf location. As soon as I get into the parking lot, the lady walks up to my car, tries to get in, and I was like, oh, no, we're not doing that. I'm going to get out of the car and talk to you. So I start talking to her, and she starts telling me that basically she ended up in our parking lot because some guy had thrown her out of his car, And then she started telling me all these elaborate stories that seemed too big to be true. And then she gave me a fictitious name. She said her name was Mary Jane. You know what I'm saying, bro? Okay. And then we're trying to find like a shelter that she can stay at, and the cops come up, and the cop interviews her, looks her up. Turns out her name was Mary, and all her stories that he could verify were actually true. And he came to me and he said, "Listen, if you can't find a place for her to stay tonight, I can just tell her to get off your property and go kick rocks." And I thought, no, I'm responsible for her. She walked onto our church property. Yeah. Now she's my problem. So I say to her, Mary, clearly she had some sort of addiction issue. I said, "Do you want to go to rehab?" And she said, "Yeah." And I said, "Okay, we got to find you a safe place to stay tonight." And she said, "I could stay at my sister's." I said, "Cool, we'll get you a ride there." So me and a couple other guys hop in my car. She hops in the car, and we head off to her sister's. Now, her sister lives in Middleburg, which is about 15 minutes away from our Oakleaf location, and I'm thinking it's like an apartment there. And so we drive to Middleburg, and then we take a right down this country road. And we keep going. And it gets darker and darker, and there's fog now coming up on the road. And I'm like, this is how I'm going to die. So Mary, it's like 5 miles into this country trip, and Mary goes, "Oh, we just passed it." So we turn around, and I turn into this like gravel dirt driveway, and there's like a double wide trailer with 2 guys hanging out on the porch at midnight. And she goes, "No, it's not there. We're gonna go past that." So we go past it to this kind of shed-looking house that was made out of cinder blocks, and she goes, "You can park right here." And there's like equipment here and equipment there, and the house in front of me. I'm like, this is like a fatal funnel here. Like I was born at night, but not last night, Mary. I'm not getting stuck. I said, "I'm good right here." So she said, "Okay, hang on 1 minute. I'm just gonna run inside." So she runs inside. I back my car up and point it out to the road because I'm getting out of this thing. I can imagine the headlines now because I was an addict. It's gonna, the headlines: addict pastor relapses, dies in drug deal gone bad. What a horrible way to go. My wife's gonna be mad at me. My kids are gonna think I'm a loser. Nobody's gonna believe I was there helping some barefoot girl get to her sister's house. So a couple minutes go by, and another girl comes out of the house, and it's like straight out of a Requiem with a Dream or like a Dave Chappelle skit. She's like scratching herself, and she walks up to my passenger side window, which is rolled down. There's just a little bit of glass showing, and she leans in, and she just knocks on the window. And I say, "Can I help you?" And she goes, "She said she'll be out in a second." And I said, "Are you her sister?" And she went, "Yeah, I'm her sister." And I said I was getting her to her sister's place. We're done. And she said, "You got anything in the car of hers?" And I went, "Nope." And she went, "All right, you're free to go then." And we got out of there. The whole time I'm like, how did I end up in this situation? The thing is, if you take responsibility for the people that God places in your life, it's going to cost you something. Yeah. It might cost you your time, your energy, your finances. It's going to cost you something. In World War II, there was a priest named Father Kobe. Father Kobe saved 2,000 Jews from dying in the Nazi death camps until February 17th, 1941, the Gestapo raided his church and arrested him and threw him in prison. They eventually moved him to Auschwitz. While he was there, 3 prisoners escaped, and the guards wanted to make an example of the prisoners to prevent them from wanting to escape again. So they decided that they were going to take 10 men at random and starve them to death. And so they did that. They started pulling person after person out of the crowd. And eventually there was a guy who started crying out, like, what about my wife? What about my kids? And Father Kobe felt like that was his lost coin, that he was responsible for that man. So he stepped forward and he said, let me take his place. So they let that guy go, and Father Kobe joined the 9 other men, and they threw him in a barracks, and they began to starve them to death. Over the next few days, Father Kobe would sing hymns and praises and was so joyful going to his death. And little did he know that there was a freedom fighter that was imprisoned there as well, a guy named Balatnitsky, who would go by the barracks every day, and he would hear Father Kobe's joy in his heart. And he thought, man, what's with this guy? This guy willing to lay down his life for a guy he barely knows, so happy to go see his God. What's with that faith? I want a God like that. I want a faith like that. Eventually, all the men would die except for Father Kobe, and the Germans broke in and poisoned him to death. The war would come to an end, and the Soviet Union would be formed. And that freedom fighter, Balatnitsky, became Father Balatnitsky. And he started a movement behind the Iron Curtain called the Osea movement that led hundreds of thousands of people to life in Christ and brought light to a very dark place. All because Father Kobe took responsibility for that man and was willing to pay that price. The good news for us, taking responsibility for the people in our lives probably won't cost us our life unless you're outside some meth house at midnight. But will cost us something. It's going to cost you your time, your finances, your conveniences, your comfort zone. It's going to cost you something. And we have to be willing to pay that price. The third reason why I think people remain far from God, why lost coins don't come home or don't get found, is because we give up too easily. We give up too easily. They said they didn't want to come to church last time I talked to them. We just give up. Maybe we say no for them. About 6 months ago, I was sitting with Pastor Tim, and we were talking, and he had like a baseball game for his kids that he had to go to. He was working on his message. He was meeting with the team, and he was trying to get a haircut in there somewhere. And I said to him, I said, I bet you I could get a barber to come up here and cut your hair every Saturday night right before service. And you'd have a fresh cut, and then you wouldn't have to worry about going to get a haircut every week. And he was like, that'd be nice. I said, let me work on it. So I did. I found a barber that would come up on Saturday at 3:30. And every Saturday I'd text him in the morning, and I would say, hey, are we good? And he'd say, yep. A couple months went by, and I was at our Fleming Island location doing some landscaping when it was 3:30 on Saturday, and Pastor Tim texted me, and he goes, hey, did you reach out to the barber? Because normally he's there. And I'm like, oh, dang it, I forgot. So I text him, and I say, hey, man, are we still on today? And he goes, I didn't hear from you. I'm all booked up. Now, I'm not the kind of guy who gives up that easily, and I don't want my pastor going up on stage looking all disheveled, so just because I forgot to text the barber. So I reach out to another barber I know, and he's in Chicago, and I'm like racking my brain, and then I remember there's a barber in the small group that me and my buddy Tommy run. So I call my buddy Tommy, and I say, hey, will you send me Mark's number? And so he sends it to me, and I call him, and I'm like, Mark, I'm in a pickle, man. I need somebody who can come up and cut Pastor Tim's hair in the next 15 minutes. And he goes, oh, I can do that. I go, awesome, man, and I'll meet you there. And he goes, one problem, I don't have a car. And I said, all right, I'll come pick you up, bro. I'll come pick you up. Now I think he's about a mile away, and so I get off the phone with him and I start heading in his direction, and I call Pastor Tim. Now, mind you, I've never seen Mark cut hair before. I don't know how good he is, but he has a waiting list, so I'm confident that he's amazing, and that's what I leave out the part of not knowing, and I just tell Pastor Tim, he's amazing. He's going to do a great job. I got this guy. I'm going to pick him up right now, sir. So I start heading out, and then his address comes through, and I realize he's not a mile from me. He's like 30 minutes away from me. So I'm whipping down the road, running yellow lights. And And I run up into the barber shop. As soon as I get there, he runs out to the car, he hops in, and we head towards the church. I get about a mile down the road, and all of a sudden, I look down, and I look at him, and I say, man, you're never going to believe this. I'm running out of gas. For those who know me, that's a common occurrence, right? I lose everything. So I'm about a half a mile from a gas station in front of me. A block behind me is another gas station, but I ain't got time to turn around, so I'm gonna make it to the one that's a half a mile down the road, right? But five feet later, my car was like, no, you're really out of gas. So I'm done. I get out of my car. I go to grab the gas can that's in the back of my car, and as soon as I open it up, I realize I left it at Pastor Tim's house 2 days ago. So I run as fast as I can to the gas station that's like a block away from me. I run in, I steal a gas can. I say, I'll pay for this later. And I run out, fill up the gas tank. It's probably like 10 minutes before service when I fly up into the back of the Oakleaf location. Mark runs in there, buzzes up Pastor Tim's hair. Turns out he's a good barber. Did a great job. I was right. He's now like Pastor Tim's permanent barber. I don't even have to text him. He actually just comes, which is very, very nice. If we're going to reach the people that God has placed in our lives, we're going to have to not give up. We're going to have tenacity. We're going to have to see it through. We're not going to let an empty gas tank stop us from completing our mission. The woman in the story will do anything to get the coin. She's never going to give up. A couple years ago, there was a girl who started coming here. Her husband woke up one day and said, I don't love you anymore, and left. Left her a single mom. And she started showing up to church to try something new. About a year ago, she started getting more and more involved, making new relationships. And then there was a first Wednesday where she felt like God told her he wanted all parts of her life. And specifically, she felt like God was talking about her work. See, Lauren was in the Navy, and she had a crew of guys that she was responsible for, but she left her religious beliefs at home. She didn't talk about it. And she felt like God was saying, no, these are your responsibility. These are your people. I'm assigning them to you. And so she took on the challenge. And she went to work, and she started inviting her coworkers to church every single week. And they thought she went crazy. And they made fun of her, and it was uncomfortable. And yet she kept going and going and going. And then one day, it was Blockbuster weekend. That's a thing we do here in the fall. It's a one-off of a series that we typically do called At the Movies, where we take a blockbuster movie like Spider-Man and we cut it down to like a 15-minute clip, and we play it in church, and then we use it as a launching pad to teach biblical truths. There's like popcorn and soda and characters, and most importantly, every first-time guest gets a free movie ticket. So she walks into work and she says, guys, if you come to church with me, you get a free movie ticket. She's paying them to come to church now. So they all come. In fact, I met them. I think we have a picture of them. Yep, there they all are. Yeah. They showed up. Lauren introduced me to all of them. I chatted with them for a couple minutes. I remember walking away thinking, those guys are never, ever coming back. They looked miserable. Like that was a forced smile, I swear. They looked like kids whose mom dragged them to an event that they hate. Even during the week, I was sitting there. Somebody mentioned, isn't it cool how Lauren got all her coworkers to come to church? And I was like, yeah, it's too bad they're never coming back. The next week, I'm walking through the foyer, and I bump into one of them, and I'm like, bro, you came back! And he's like, yeah, Jesus changed my life. And I went, he did? It's odd when the pastor is shocked about that. He does that? He's like, yeah, man, I quit drinking. I'm full of joy. I'm doing a 180, man. I'm following Jesus with my life. And his name was Gabe. He's actually in the picture. He's the guy with the black shirt and the gold leaves. And I was still skeptical. I was like, we'll see. We'll see, buddy. So he started joining small groups, got into a freedom group, started serving on the team, started moving up into leadership. Changed his whole life. We baptized him in the back of the building. His parents were there. They were crying. This is all they ever wanted for their son. He just joined the college. And if you sat down with him now, he would tell you, like, he feels like God made him to do full-time ministry, that he wants to be a pastor. His whole direction of his life is changed because Lauren never gave up. Because she took responsibility for his journey, was willing to pay the price, and was persistent. So where do we go from here? You're like, okay, Pastor, I'm in. I will take responsibility for the people that God has divinely placed in my life. What do I do? Let me give you three quick things. Three quick things, and we'll get you out of here. One, be prepared. Be prepared. Good news for you. This week we got Christmas services. And they're off the hook. I've seen them. There's like holograms. There's people parachuting from the ceiling. That's not true. That's actually a lie. There's nobody But it'd be cool if they did. They're awesome, and they're going to be amazing. And you'll be proud to invite your friends, your loved ones, your coworkers to church. And there's a studies show that 82% of the population would show up to church on Christmas if just asked. Those same studies show that only 2% of Christ followers will actually ask somebody. Isn't that crazy? Only 2% of this room would invite somebody to church on Christmas. Here's the deal. Our team works tirelessly to create an environment that's funny, that's inspirational, that's applicable to people's lives, that is engaging. Pastor Tim works tirelessly on his messages to inspire people and teach biblical truths, and most importantly, give people the opportunity to step across that line of faith. You know what he can't do? He can't know your friends, your coworkers, your loved ones, your acquaintances. Those are the people that God has assigned to you. Yeah. And we can partner together. You do everything that you can to get them here, and we'll do everything we can to get them to God. So on your way out, you're going to get like a pack of invites for Christmas. And there'll be like 5 in there. If you want more, you can grab more. Do me a favor, grab those, put them in your car. Your car goes everywhere you go. Your pants don't go everywhere you go because you change your pants, right? You should. Your car goes everywhere you go. You can run out of your work and go grab one out of your car. You can run out of the restaurant and go grab it out of your car. You can run out of the gym and go grab one out of your car. Put them in your car and then pray over them. Ask God to open up opportunities for you. Opportunities to invite people to church. Invite people to Christmas. And be willing to pay the price. Like, let's say they live over more in the Arlington area. Hey, I'll meet you there. I'll meet you at the service. Take responsibility for the people God's placed in your life. Be the 2% that actually invite. Number 2, be aware. Be attentive to your surroundings. I'm not the most attentive guy, especially when I'm driving. I'm very aggressive, but not attentive. So I'm not paying attention to my surroundings. One day I was driving down the highway. I got off on this exit. I was on the phone, and I look over, and the guy next to me is just cussing me out. Like, he is mad. And I think, what's that guy's deal? You know? And then it hits me. I probably like cut him off or something in traffic when I wasn't paying attention. And so, being the nice guy I am, I looked over at him and I went, I'm sorry, I'm on the phone. You got to do that when the light turns green, because that dude might be pulling out a gun, you know? Be aware. Pay attention to your surroundings. That God's going to open up opportunities. There's, that waitress who's having a bad day and you leave an extra tip and you send her an invite card. God's going to open up opportunities. Be aware of new relationships in your life. New people in your vicinity, in your sphere. A friend of mine last year brought like a dozen people to Christmas services. And I was like, man, you're killing the Christmas service invite game. And they were like, yeah, I got a whole new sphere of people in my life. They had joined a new gym, and they were inviting everybody who was in the gym to church. They all came, and a bunch of them stayed. They're still here a year later. Be aware. And finally, be persistent. Don't give up. I mean, maybe they don't come on Christmas, but we got New Year's services, and we got a relationship series, and we got at the movies this spring, and we got Easter. There's going to be all sorts of opportunities for you to convince them to come check out this Jesus thing. Be persistent. All my kids are in jiu-jitsu and boxing and MMA. They're lethal. They've been in it for years. And when they become teenagers, I'm going to go pick fights with people I don't like, and then my kids are going to beat them up. That's the whole point of it. It's a long-term strategy. But my oldest son, Connor, one of the character traits that I love about him is he just never gives up. He doesn't, quitting, I don't think he thinks is an option for him. And he gets in some predicaments, like when he's boxing, he always ends up in a class where there's just one other kid, and the kid's twice his size, and so he has to spend the next hour fighting that kid. And the nose is all bloody, and he's crying and hyperventilating, and the coach has to calm him down, and he just runs back in there. And on the drive home, he never says, Dad, I don't want to do this anymore. He never throws off his gloves and says, I quit. He just so persistent. He just goes and goes and goes. He's doing competitions now. He's in tournaments. And so after class, he does further training for his tournaments. And his coaches have been talking to him about imposing his will on his opponent. He's much more of a defensive fighter, but they want to make him more offensive, not offensive. But they're always, you got to impose your will on your opponent, Connor. I want you to take them down. And so one day he said, we're going to work on takedowns until you're exhausted. We're just going to do it over and over and over and over again. And my wife, Bonnie, got it on video. Why don't you check this out?
You don't start things and not finish them. You don't quit. There's nothing that comes out of quitting besides knowing that you didn't finish. We finish everything. You start it, finish it. If you're going to do it to try and be the best. Not be better than other people, be the best for you.
Yeah. That was the first time I'd seen him do a double leg takedown. I just happened to catch it on video, and it was because he was testing. He was testing to move up in his jiu-jitsu ranking. And when you test in jiu-jitsu, they line up a half a dozen students, and one at a time they come at you, and you have to roll with them and wrestle with them for a couple minutes, and then a fresh person comes in over and over again. And that was the last kid in line. So he had been doing this for like 15, 20 minutes, and the whole time his coach was like, impose your will, Connor, impose your will. And then his persistence pays off. We have to be persistent. Gabe came, and the next week, his roommate Ben came. Ben is the guy standing next to Gabe in the plaid shirt. And then the next week after that, Jonathan came. Meanwhile, Ben's soon-to-be ex-wife had been coming off and on to church here. They all started getting involved, and a couple months went by. Ben went to Gabe, and he said, hey, I think I got to move out. Gabe said, why? He said, I think I got to go make it right with my wife. Even last week, Ben invited a coworker to church. The coworker didn't come. The coworker's wife invited her sister. Her sister showed up. And she said she'd never found a place that felt so much like home. Literally, dozens and dozens of people's lives changed. Addicts set free, marriages restored, because Lauren didn't give up. She was persistent. And over a lifetime, hundreds. And one day, I believe she'll stand in heaven and she'll get to see the ripple effects of the decisions she made when she took ownership of the people that God had placed in her life. She paid the price she had to pay, and she never gave up. Let's pray. I believe that there are people here today that are brand new to this whole Jesus thing. Maybe you got dragged here to church and you're wondering if trying this Jesus thing really would work. It changed my life. It changed Gabe's life. And it could change yours. In a moment, I want to give you an opportunity to step across that line of faith, to put God to the test. Say, Jesus, I'm in. I've just never met a person who's regretted that decision. If that's you and your heart beats a mile a minute right now, I believe that God's calling you home. I'm not going to ask you to come down front. I'm not going to ask you to stand up, but I am in a moment going to ask you to raise your hand. I believe that there's Christ followers here who maybe you've been following God, but you haven't been taking ownership of the people in your life. In a moment, I want to give you an opportunity to hit the reset button and say, God, I'm all in. You can have every part of my life. I will partner with you to reach the people that matter most to you. And if that's you, I'm not going to ask you to come down front or stand up, but in a moment, I'm going to ask you to raise your hand. If you're in either one of those two categories, at the count of 3, 1, 2, 3, raise your hand. Raise it proud. Thank you. You can put your hands down. Let's do this. Church, let's just rededicate our lives together as a church. Why don't you repeat after me out loud? Dear Jesus, I give my life to you. Change me and use me to find your lost coins. In Jesus' name, amen. Thank you, guys.